Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jeff Dunphy from retooling.org. And today we're going to chat a little about the joy class and the joy material. What I would like to do today is share with you a few slides that I've put together in order for you to understand what it is we do in the joy class and how it is that we provide service to you as students in this venture of ours. We start with the first slide, and it has to do with what in the world is going on, and it is maniacally omnipresent that the world is going into a tailspin. There's a whole bunch of challenging things happening to the world, geopolitically, militarily, economically. We have the collapse of Greece, we have the collapse of the demise of various South American economies. We have challenges going on in the world. And we have political parties in the US. We've got an election coming up in the US. We have the European Central Bank playing games. We've got all of Europe going into a wee bit of a tailspin with all sorts of challenges. Now, this is calamitous, yes, but in the very same breath, it is also an expression of evolutionary changes. Now, part of the challenge that happens in evolutionary changes is oftentimes it looks as if these things are bad. And it isn't so much that they're bad, it is that they are a challenge to the planet. And they are in the normal course of the world, the globe's evolution. Now, I bring this slide up to represent that to many of you, you are full of and completely ensconced with a whole bunch of yabber going on in your mind. This is omnipresent. Everybody has it. It is not for the faint of heart, and it is not easy to deal with. And we also have a dialogue going on with mainstream media or mass mind that oftentimes creates great confusion, because mainstream media and mass mind would suggest that when we subscribe to mass mind, we will be happy if we have the right car, have the right wife, have the right children, have the right body shape, have the right clothes. And oftentimes this presents itself as divine unrest, some of us speak to. This would be the midlife crisis that happens in the 40-year-olds, or historically happened in the 40-year-olds, and it's now happening in the 20 or 25-year-olds, because these individuals are called to a place that says, I'm not happy with what mainstream media or mass mind tells me that I will be happy with. So it then begets the observation that your own worst enemy cannot harm you nearly as much as your own unguarded thoughts. And this is what we undertake to address in the joy class and in the material that we would like to share with you, should you see fit. There is a very simple observation at this time, and that is, the more complicated it is and the more complicated it gets, the more distracted it becomes. And that is something that we want to get away from. We want to get back to first principles. We want to get back to the genesis, if you will, of who you are and what you stand for. And so then we bring this great picture up, and it talks about who you really are. You are the stuff of the stars, as Carl Sagan would be wont to say. Now, in the sharing of and in the propagation of the joy material and what we're doing here, we would like to share with you ancient truths, and these are, the ancient teachings are your rightful heritage. They are something that belong to you, that you may very well align with or resonate with, and we want to be able to share them with you in a fashion that is palatable and digestible and is not too overwhelming, but in the very same breath, do it in a way where it speaks to the hunger that many people have right now who are hungry for something more than what mainstream media or mass mind would like to tell you that you will be fed by. This is a fine balancing act. It's not something that you can do just with your head, and it is certainly not something you can do just with your heart. It is that where you dance with the head and the heart, and you bring the two of them together. The head will tell you what is possible, and the heart will tell you what is appropriate. And it is only by the intermingling of and the collaboration of the heart and the head that these things will come to light. Now, this slide is an incredibly important slide and something that I wish to share with everybody, and that is, depending on where you stand, is exactly what happens when you see whatever it is you see. Now, the whole premise behind this is one is a square and one is a circle, as you can see. We want to propagate a really important observation, and that is perhaps both of them are true and perhaps both of them serve you. Now, in their service to you, you need to be able to recognize that sometimes the perspective that mainstream media or mass mind or our sociology projects or would like for you to encompass or embrace may not necessarily be true. And so consequently, we ask at times during the course of our discourse here is if you are willing or able or both to suspend disbelief. And one of the things we don't ask, and that is, we are not here to tell you what to think. We are here to offer observations that might need noodling upon, might need thinking on. We're not here to say what you need to think. We are here to turn the lights on so that you can figure out what might be true in the course of our time together. And as George Bernard Shaw was wont to say, all great truths begin as blasphemies, and we want to entertain you with the thought that can you stand in a place and hear something that is outside of the norm? Are you prepared to hear things like maybe civilization didn't start 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, but maybe it started 8, 10, 12, 15,000 years ago, maybe even beyond that. And there's certainly things that are presenting themselves with the scientists today, the archaeologists today, that might present themselves that maybe our viewpoint and our accepted realities of truth about the planet are maybe a bit light in their breadth of scope. We talk about in the joy material, in the joy class, we talk about how the world is changing and how many of us who are called to wake up would like to be on the transition team. And we would suggest that when that speaks to you, you may very well be inclined to feel that way and to participate with us in some of the work we do. We are not afraid of turning the lights on to what is going on the planet, on one hand, and also in our own minds, because oftentimes we have predispositions and predilections that preclude us from seeing what is, merely because we are projecting on whatever it is that we see. And this oftentimes creates a false sense of reality. And, as Plato said, when you can see beyond the shadows and lies of the culture, oftentimes you will be looked upon as a bit odd. However, I would suspect that for those of you watching this and those of you participating in this little discourse, maybe it speaks to how you would like to see things in fully enlightened and how you are disenchanted with the way that you see things now. When the light illuminates behind things that are extraordinarily brilliant, oftentimes the way you look at things changes. Now, I want to chat now about what we refer to in class as our genius. And we talk about the very simple thing of how brilliant every one of you is, and how there is a genius intrinsic to all of you. And while we oftentimes have self-conversation and self-chat that says, you are not bright or brilliant or connected or aligned or enlightened, we beg to differ here in the Joy material and here in Retooling, and we would like to stipulate that within every one of us is a genius. And in that genius, it has a breadth of knowledge and an understanding of things that goes beyond the scope of where your intellect can bring you. And from time to time, these great sages throughout the history of mankind have presented themselves to reacquaint us, because we've always had it. Every one of us has this genius within us. And these great sages show up from time to time to turn the lights on so that we can find the genius within us. To which I'd like to introduce you to Dwal Khul. Now, Dwal Khul has taken on many iterations in his misspent youth, if you will. And he was there at the birth of Christ. He was one of the three wise men. He has been collaborating with mankind from time immemorial to turn the lights on. And he has been a great educator and a great purveyor of knowledge and light throughout man's quest to wake up. Oftentimes, mankind is kept in the dark and kept asleep by mainstream media and mass mind, because when mankind is asleep, the mainstream media and mass mind can manipulate and compromise mankind's best interests in order to further mainstream media and mass mind's objectives. Now, conventionally, or in the last 100 or 150 years, Dwal Khul has interacted with some very brilliant individuals who have done some great and brilliant work in this plane. And the one that comes to mind, one of the many, but one of the more auspicious ones that comes to mind, is Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, whom he was party to and privy to the writing of both Isis Unveiled and also The Secret Doctrine, which turned the world on its ear when it was published in the late 1800s. Now, she was a very accomplished and very eclectic and very odd duck, if you will, and lived a very interesting life in service to the ancient teachings. Her published work, Isis Unveiled, and also The Secret Doctrine, amongst other essays as well, and little books, The Voice of the Silence as well, are still in print and are still highly sought of, or highly sought after, and are very illuminating in what they are doing and how they provide information to this next chapter. Dwal Khul danced with and interacted with HPB, as we call her, Helena Blavatsky, and then early on after Helena Blavatsky left her physical body, she died, he introduced himself to a woman named Alice Bailey, and they started a collaboration where the two of them interacted and danced together, where they wrote 18 books, to which we have in here in the Lamasery where we reside, and also anywhere in the Lucis Trust, which Alice Bailey established, where you can find all of the books that they wrote together. Now, I want to say that this is the teacher that introduced me to the ancient teachings and introduced many of us to the path that we are now participating in today. Now, this is Dorothy Gates, and she was a great grand teacher, and she brought many of us all over the world in our pursuit of knowledge. And she, again, was party to and witness to and a student of Dwal Kuhl. And then it brings us to yet another teacher who Dorothy was a student of, and that would be Douglas Baker. Now, Douglas Baker was another student of Dwal Kuhl. And next to Douglas Baker is a wonderful medical doctor, naturopath, herbologist, great yogi teacher, and great herbologist. I think I've said that. And her name was Kamla Datlai. Now, she was an individual who partnered up with Douglas Baker and did all kinds of tours in England to teach the ancient teachings, which he was called upon to do by Dwal Kuhl. Now, a very short period of time ago, in the last couple of years, I met Kamla, and we had what seemed to be like a reunion together. The two of us looked into each other's eyes, and we held each other's hand like old lost friends, and we reminded each other that we have had connections and attachments that transcend time. And I feel very blessed to have met her just prior to her departure from this realm. And again, it all gets tied back to Dwal Kuhl and his grace and his kindness and his loving participation in how he has chosen to educate mankind through and around and with a variety of individuals on the earth plane. Now, he showed up to a woman named Kathleen Kingdon in the early 80s, 1983, I believe, and they started a dialogue, and they started to work together and are still working together today. And they work together through a foundation called the Vajra Flame Foundation, and also through a website called the masterdk.com Foundation. Now, in their collaboration, she is still working with him and continues to offer teachings and shall continue to offer teachings until he suggests to her that their chapter is over. We are blessed to have all of these individuals who have touched us and been with us to participate in retooling.com, and we also are graced to have the presence of Kathleen in the current realm. All of the others have passed over. Kathleen is still here, and she and I continue to collaborate as we move forward the teachings of Dwal Kuhl. Now, I want to chat a little about the evolution of the joy material and the evolution of where we're going next, and it has to do with the art and the science of meditation. Now, while many people would profess to meditate, many might not actually participate in meditation as opposed to being quiet and listening passively to their thoughts go by. But there is an art to it, and there is a science to it. And it is in the Joy class that we actually teach both the art and the science to it. Now, I want to chat briefly here about the joy materials and how we might and have over the years, over the past 15 or 20 years, taught the joy materials. Now, these materials presented themselves in their last iteration through one of the masters called the Venetian, and he gave them in Sanskrit to Iamblichus, an ancient Greek philosopher. Now, Iamblichus took these and he translated them into Greek and taught them in his time in Greece. And Iamblichus, as many may know, and if you don't, he moved along in his progress through his evolutionary pattern, and he ascended as the master Hilarion. He showed up a little while later and presented these presentations and this material to a woman named Mabel Collins. Now, she, in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, she created some literature that Dorothy Gates, that we just were introduced to, brought into the next realm of awareness. And it is these joy materials that we share with you today. Now, I have on occasion been wont to take tours with individuals and share with them the brilliance of the south of France. And it is in this, the hearing of of a very sacred and special sound in the fields of lavender in the south of France. Now, the quote that we get from Socrates is, learning is remembering, and teaching is helping one to remember. One of the agendas that we have here is bringing everybody into that place where you remember what's going on. And I want to constantly reiterate that all of this stuff is yours. And it is our honor and our obligation, in a sense, our divine obligation, to turn the lights on brightly enough so you can remember the very fabric of your genius and how it resides in you and how it serves you and how it is quite keenly inspired to serve you as you move forward. Now, further to this slide, I want to connect with the thought of this. I would bring individuals into the fields in France, and we would line up and look down these fields of lavender, and they were quite majestic and quite wonderful. And I would say, listen, listen. There's something going on here. Listen, listen, listen. And everybody would look at me and say, can't hear anything. I don't hear a thing. And I'd say, okay, get really quiet and listen. And they would listen for a few moments, and they would look at me with blank stares, and then their eyes would light up. And in the course of the lighting up of their eyes, they'd go, oh my goodness. And what they would hear is the buzzing of the bees around the lavender. And without exception, all of them came into this realization and recognition that when they heard the buzzing of the bees, there was a point in time where they could not hear it. It was just there. It was a fabric of their recognition. They couldn't drown it out because they'd tuned into it. But a few minutes before, they couldn't hear it. And then all of a sudden, they couldn't not hear it. And this was a very important part of the aspect of revelation that we talk about in the joy material. And that is, when you get that there is something of yourself and something of a great import that is wishing to speak to you, wishing to communicate with you, when you get that it's there and you get quiet enough to listen, it presents itself with blinding clarity. And this is what we wish to share with you in retooling.org. Now, in the course of the work that we do and in the course of the information and the turning on of the lights that we do, we want to chat about the mysteries of the mind. And we're going to use ancient techniques. Now, the ancient techniques are no more stale or outdated than truth is, and truth never gets outdated and is never stale-dated. And we're going to be using what we phrase, or what we paraphrase, or what we refer to as Gnosticism, which is knowing and knowledge and knowing and knowledge. And this is from time immemorial. We want to plug into that part of you that knows and understands and gets that there is something bigger to this picture than what society, sociology, mainstream media, and mass mind tells you. Now, this slide, and oftentimes we sit down and ask, is that the sun or the moon? And many times students will say, oh, it's the sun, or oh, it's the moon. And this is the venue that we'd like to entertain, is sometimes you can't tell what your ego mind or your lower mind and your higher mind, your essence mind, if you will, which one of them is talking. And one of the things we undertake to do is present to you a place where you can differentiate between the two, so that you can become more aligned with and more illumined, if you will. Now, this slide talks about ships in harbor are safe, but that's not what ships are. All of you are made to make this journey. Some of you are ready for it, and some may not be, and that's okay. There will be a point in time where many of you know that this is a journey that you want to undertake. And when that time presents itself, we'll be here, we trust, to be of service to you. This is not an easy journey, and this is something that we call the path of return. Now, we ask the question oftentimes, what are you returning to? And perhaps it presents itself to you that we are returning to home. We are returning to our soul. We're returning to our genius. We're returning to that place where we know. And we've been lost for a while. We've been lost in the miasma and the quicksand and the porridge of mainstream media and sociology. And this isn't a place that resides well within our soul. It drives us a bit nuts, and we want to get out of it. And we want to do that by coming home to the great mansion of spirit, as Yogananda once coined. We will introduce you to the keys of consciousness, which are meditation, study, and service. And we will introduce you to the various manifestations of and the theme and variation thereon. We are going to attend to the cosmic laws, hermetic principles, esoteric science, and symbology. As Plato said, and as Socrates said, and as the Oracle at Delphi said, the soul speaks to us in symbols and in images. We do not want to be inconversant in symbology, because when the soul starts to speak to us, we want to be able to understand and learn and glean something from something of a higher order. Now, one of the memes that we propagate in class is the mind is a wonderful servant, but always, always a terrible master. We have thoughts going on, we've got yabber going on in our head that very, very seldom serves us well. And we want to participate in a journey that extricates ourselves from the tyranny of the mind, the tyranny of the ego mind, and puts us into a next place. And so we posit this query, and that is, you aren't who you think you are. You aren't even who others think you are. You are who you think others think you are, and you're lost. To that, we would then bid, is it not now time to go and find yourself? I suspect some may agree. To which we ask, are you ready to dive in and go where few dare to go? This is not a light question, and it is not a question to be taken lightly. And you will find that things will not look, in this investigative process, they will not look like you think they should. And I want to bid you a fair warning that that's okay, because as things unfold, it will be, in keeping with the time of revelation, it will be revelatory. And I want everybody to pay attention to this, and that is, make no mistake about it. Enlightenment is a destructive process, and it has nothing to do with becoming better or being happier. Enlightenment is the crumbling away of untruth, and it's seeing through the facade of pretense, and it's the complete eradication of everything we imagined to be true. You ready to go there? Let us trust. Let us trust that you're watching this and participating this with that kind of mindset. Now, this awakening presents itself so that you can contribute to the evolution of yourself, and equally importantly, the evolution of mankind. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is a brief introduction to the joy material, and it also speaks to how we may be of service to you and how we may participate in a way that is contributory to your evolutionary process. This is Jeff Dunphy from retooling.org, and I would very much like to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be of service.